to thinking, what does it mean, a prophetic family? And trying to think about what are the words that can help us really understand what that meant in the time of the Prophet ﷺ to have a prophetic family, and what does that mean to us now, and how can we build a prophetic family? Because certainly our world is in need of families that are truly prophetic, or truly in, oh, thank you. Look, I'm getting a special. Families that are truly responding to the needs and life that we're in now. Are we fine like that? And so I thought about it, and I have some different thoughts, and actually I've been going back and forth about what I want to emphasize and what I want to think about, and I thought we would just look at one another and figure it out when we're here. The family of the Prophet ﷺ, first of all, is a very large family. It's not what we think about in 2016. So when I say family in 2016, we think mother, father, son and daughter, or maybe 2 sons and 2 daughters, or 2 daughters and a son, or whatever. A few kids and a couple of parents. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, we have, from the very early days, the emphasis on Silat Rahim. And Silat Rahim is the connection of the wombs. It's the connection of the wombs, that's really what it is. So it's relatives. It's the connection of relatives and bringing them together. And this is very important in how we define prophetic family. In fact, we can extrapolate from the very first wahy, or revelation to the Prophet ﷺ, when he came back and he was afraid, and he said to Khadijah what he said, and she responded to him that he shouldn't be afraid, because since he was a person who did Silat Rahim, who kept his family together, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God would not wrong him. So here we understand something, which is that there is a protection from evil, there's a protection from harm or pain, or there's a protection in our lives when we bring our families together. Islamically, to bring people together anyway, even when it's hard, is the way of our Prophet ﷺ. That's part of prophetic family, is not a rosy, romantic Hollywood family. It's the messy, drama, human factor all together, where we love each other anyway, and we uplift each other anyway, and we bring each other together anyway, and we're working to come together to drag everybody to Jannah with us. Hopefully we ourselves are going, or maybe we're the ones that are getting dragged. But one way or the other, that the connections between us are loose, maybe they're loose, they become tighter, so that we can just link our arms and grab as many as we can, and be grabbed by as many as we can, and be brought along this beautiful path of joyful faith, which ends up in Jannah. Because when we love people, and we love our families, we want for them what is best, and we shouldn't choose our own nafs over them. So we've been talking today, some of the young women here and I, about something that has been going on today, and this is the Oxford Dictionary came out, not today, but in the last few weeks. The Oxford Dictionary came out with a word that is the word of the year. Who knows what it is? You guys know what it is? The word of the year. Anyone over here? Not someone who I was talking to an hour ago about it, preferably. Or maybe someone I was talking to an hour ago about it. Does anybody remember? What's the word of the year for the Oxford Dictionary? Anyone? It's post-truth. Post-truth. That we are now in a time of post-truth. And in the beginning of October, I was visiting Fadia, and we went to Princeton and attended a lecture. The lecture was called The Age of Feeling. And it was given by Dr. Robert George and Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. It was actually a dialogue. But the idea of the age of feeling, what they were saying, is that we don't care about thoughts so much anymore. We care about how things feel and how things feel to us. So if I don't feel like it, then I don't do it. And so if we put together this concept of the age of feeling with the concept of a post-truth society, we have a really dangerous mix. Because then people don't care about truth anymore. They care about how they feel. So how do I feel right now? It doesn't matter what truth is there. It just matters how I happen to feel right this minute. Now when it comes to families and talking about our family and our extended family, then Uncle Joe, or in my case, Aunt Pat, whoever it is that makes us feel a little bit uncomfortable, we say, well, I don't feel like having them over for dinner. I don't feel like spending time with this cousin or this, oh my goodness, are we live? Okay, but I just want to say that I love my Aunt Pat. And I really do, and I was actually thinking yesterday that I should not look at my face. Oh, that's hot in here. Yes, I'm going to back off from that one. Okay, so in this age of feeling and the post-truth, what happens is that we decide about how we feel right now instead of what's right and what's good. And as a result, people are searching for meaning. And in the prophetic family, we learn that there's meaning in being part of a family. There's meaning there. There's nutrition in the family itself. And people are searching for meaning in a post-truth society where their feelings matter the most, so they're not finding meaning. Because we don't find meaning if we're only asking the question of, well, who am I? What's my identity? How do I feel? And so, how do I feel as a mother? How do I feel as a father? How do I feel as a son? Well, it really doesn't matter how you feel, actually. What matters is that you're a good son, or a good daughter, or a good wife, or a good husband, or a good man, a good woman. That's what matters. What matters is that we are good people, contributing to society, worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, those who believe and do good deeds. It doesn't say those who are feeling good and feeling their deeds. It doesn't say those who feel like doing that good deed. I don't know anyone who is going to feel like getting up at 4 in the morning every single day. There are definitely going to be days where maybe you feel like staying in bed. So is that what we do? Now some people will say yes. And we need to recognize that. And so in our families, we need to think about that. So years ago, when I lived in Syria, my friends, it would be exam time. And I don't know what it's like here in Detroit, but in Damascus, when it was exam time, it was very serious. Very, very serious. And I mean, I'm not talking about the big baccalaureate exams. I'm talking about it's just test time. It's like finals for grade 3. And I'm not even exaggerating. And so the kids had to be very taken care of, and the moms were making them tea and sandwiches, and how can I help you, and helping them memorize and learn and do all their stuff so they all get 10 out of 10 because they knew that their sister would call them and say, oh, my son got 9 3/4. What did your son get? And if you had to say 9 1/2, it would be really embarrassing. And so they worked very hard on all of this. And what would happen is very, very often, there would be parents who would say, you know, my daughter, my son, they're feeling very tired. It's test time. I'm not going to wake them up to pray. Or even worse, in Ramadan, I'm not going to have them fast say, it's test time. Now, I hope that here in Detroit that sounds very weird and strange. But I want you to reflect on it for a minute and see how easy it is to fall into this age of feeling. How do my kids feel? Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how they feel. It doesn't always matter how they feel. This is a problem. This is a problem if we only care about how we feel. We have to care about what is good and right. And it's good and right to get up and pray Fajr on time. So even if children or adults or teenagers especially, those are the ones who usually don't feel like getting up. If they don't feel like getting up, it still needs to be something important. And they shouldn't feel like it's normative or normal to do what feels good. The age of feeling is a problem in our families because it breaks up relationships. And we might feel more comfortable with our closest family members, or maybe we don't feel so comfortable with our in-laws. Shame on us. How is it we don't feel comfortable with our in-laws? I just want you to know that one day you are going to be the in-law that people don't feel comfortable with. And that's not going to feel so good. So right now, if you're not feeling good, one day you're also not going to feel good, but it's going to be different because someone is going to be making you feel that way instead of you just following the feelings. So the first thing that I think is really important when we think about prophetic family is this idea of the larger family. So in my family, I need to think about those cousins that I grew up with and how I can make connections with them and how I can reach out to them and invite them to my home. And they do a great job inviting us to their showers and all of the other things that they do. And I need to do a better job bringing them to my home. And I need to make sure that I'm making the phone calls to my gazillion brothers that live all across the United States. And my nieces and nephews, I'm paying attention to them. And I need to be thinking about these things, and it's very easy to forget them and take them for granted. It's very easy to pay attention to what's in your face. We live in a society that's all about what's happening now because it's on TV, it's online, you got a notification, right? And my phone is like non-stop notifications. That's because I don't turn them off, I know, but it's just constant. They're just constantly rolling in. And so I'm always being reminded, but my phone doesn't remind me to contact my niece or my nephew who's 7 or 10 years old. And so we are only asked, and our phone only reminds us to talk to those who are talking to us. So in this idea of Silat Rahim, in the prophetic family, is the idea of reaching out. And especially today. So today, in our post-Trump stupor, our choice really generally, what we would like to do, what feels good and feels normal, is to go inside, to go to what's comfortable, to go to what's insular, to go to what we know. And that's exactly the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be reaching out, stepping out, reaching out, and creating new relationships while holding on to our other ones. And the first important relationships are those relationships of our family. So Silat Rahim should redefine who our family is in this idea of the prophetic family. And we should redefine it not only in our heads, but in how we feel, because we're not getting away from the age of feeling. So we're going to have to control how we feel and think about it and choose to feel one way or another. When the last verses of Surah Al-Baqarah were revealed, there's a verse there that told the companions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is holding them accountable even for what they think. And they were very upset. Ya Rasulullah, how can we be held accountable for this? And then the rest of the verses were revealed. You won't be held accountable. You won't be tried more than you can bear. But the Prophet ﷺ explained to them as well that it's not about being held accountable for what you first think. It's about being held accountable for what you have coffee and tea with. Those are not his words. For what you sit and hold on to, and you know exactly what I mean. The thought comes into your head, and you remember how someone said something to you that wasn't very nice. You remember how someone said something to you that kind of bothered you, and instead of just shaking it away, you sit down with it. You say, hey, how you doing? I miss you, oh thought of nastiness. I miss thinking nasty thoughts about people because there's an energy in that, right? There's an energy in anger. There's an energy in being upset. But that energy is not the prophetic energy of the family. It's an energy that breaks us apart. And today, we are in great danger because we are being asked to look outside. We're distracted. We're thinking about joining up with all different groups as we should. Activism is extremely important right now. But as our gaze is brought outside of the mosque, as our gaze is brought outside of our Muslim community, as our gaze is brought outside of our family, we have to hold on to the prophetic family, to the extended silat rahim of our family, and take care of them and uplift them. So now that we know we have to do that, what are we going to do about them? What are we responsible for? What do we need to do to take care of this family and uplift this family and live so that the Prophet ﷺ, if he were to come and see our family, he would recognize it as a Muslim family? What does that mean? What does that mean for the Prophet? If you think about all the different streets and families on your road, if the Prophet ﷺ walked into all the different families, what might he see that would make him think about, or make him think, oh, this is a Muslim family? And what would he see that would say, oh, this is not a Muslim family? So I can think about slamming doors and, of course, he's a prophet, so he has something called firasa. What's firasa? It's divine insight. So the Prophet ﷺ, he would see someone coming from far away and he would see the face of belief or the face of disbelief on someone. He wouldn't have yet heard what he had to say. So if he's walking into a home and he sees, a table and chairs and all of this, forget about the dunya stuff right now. I'm talking about relationships. And he picks up, I don't have a phone next to me to show you, but would he have to pick up the phone to see all sorts of inappropriate messages sent all across the place? And if he saw those inappropriate messages, how would he label us? We have a tool in our hands for great good and a tool in our hands for the very destruction of our souls. And I saw a great quote the other day, and it was, I don't know who said it, but it might be anonymous, but it's, you don't have a soul. You don't have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body. I thought that was really important. It's a paradigm shift for many people today. We don't have a soul in our body. We are a soul that has a body. So when we choose our body for the destruction of our soul, it's very dangerous. And it's dangerous because unlike the age of feeling and post-truth society that teaches us it's all about us and it's all really only about us and we are just individually one person and that's all that matters, it's never, ever like that. The Prophet ﷺ understood this very well. And he knew that every action, everything he did, everything he said was going to impact many, many people. And everything we do and everything we say impacts many people. Many people. But it impacts our family most of all. It impacts our children and our spouses and our parents most of all. And so when we get selfish and when we get sort of sure of ourselves and we know what we're doing and we start to build relationships with people in school or people at work, haram relationships. So if girls are we're building relationships with boys at school, or if the men are building relationships with the women at work, and let's not just look at each other and pretend like this doesn't happen, all right? This is an illness. It's an illness which if the Prophet ﷺ was to walk into our phones one by one, he would weep. He would weep tears of blood for the work that he did to teach us adab and akhlaq, good behavior and kindness and respect and loyalty to one another. And to find us so easily losing that when it's in a machine. And we all carry it very well in person, I think. I think in person we do a really good job. Like we know how to be modest and control and be professional in the ways we interact with each other when we're face to face. But the second we get inside that phone, all propriety is up for question. And that is not an example of the prophetic family. The prophetic family is a family where each individual recognizes their part in the larger family. Their part in the larger family and their piece in that whole, whoever they are, and how their lives and their thoughts affect one another. And we don't like to think like that in the United States. Maybe it's not the United States, maybe it's just a global thing. Maybe it's 2016, I don't really know what the cause is, but I know we don't like to think like that. We like to think that I want to do what I want to do, and I want to live how I want to live, but that's just not how Muslims are. It's just not how we are. We must consider in our prophetic families the effect our actions have on those around us. Our children, our spouses, even our cousins. Even our cousins. And it's not okay to say it doesn't matter, because it always matters. The Prophet ﷺ, we have many, many stories. Let me see. We have, for example, when Aisha radiallahu anha was sent food by Hafsa, and she was unamused what she's sending me food for, and she threw it on the floor and broke the plate. The Prophet ﷺ's response was what? Does anyone know? We need to give her back a plate. And that was it. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't an issue. It wasn't a scolding. It wasn't a shaming. It wasn't anything. It was a building up and a recognizing the feelings of Aisha. And to me, that's very important. Because I think that we're so much deeply in the age of feeling that it's only about our feelings, and we don't recognize that what's important in Islam is someone else's feelings, and the feelings of those around us. Fatima radiallahu anha, when she came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was dying, what did he say to her? We know that she went to him, and first she cried, and then she laughed. And we know the story, we tell it all the time. It's because the Prophet ﷺ told her what? Who knows? That?
You're going to die soon.
That she would follow him soon. And so that made her happy because she would come to him soon. But the point here is not that she's going to die. The point here is that the Prophet ﷺ was concerned for her feelings and wanted her to be happy, wanted her to feel better, and knew what to say to her to uplift her, to make her feel better. So we can go deeply into our age of feeling if we want, as long as we remember that it shouldn't be about our feelings, but about the feelings of those around us. When we talk about the Prophet ﷺ praying in the mosque with Hassan Hussein climbing on his back, we talk about this a lot, at least the women do, because we always want to know if it's okay when our 15 kids are jumping on us when we're trying to pray. And people ask me all the time, oh my God, how do I have khushu' when I've got one kid in the bathroom and one in the kitchen and one running down to the basement? I'm trying to finish my last rak'ah. And we talk about, right, and we're always, well, you know, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would pray with him climbing, and mashallah and all this. But what is that really about? It's about their feelings. It's about the kids' feelings, letting them feel comfortable with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You think his prayer was the same when they were climbing on his neck as it was? Maybe, mashallah, because he's a prophet. But certainly, it isn't for me if a child is climbing on me. And it's, you know, I'm a mother of 3 and I have a granddaughter now. So it's not the same prayer. But I shouldn't care about my prayer. I shouldn't say, oh, my khushu', get off of me, kid. I should care about the Prophet ﷺ taught us that I should care about the feelings of that child and uplift the child and make that child happy. One of the biggest mistakes I see in parents is not any big parents always, in my opinion, they always are trying to do their best. I'm one of them, and we make great mistakes. I've made a million. But we always do our best. We don't recognize our mistakes until 10, 15 years later when we're like, oh man, what did I do that for? we're always trying to do our best, and, you know, we do what we can do. And then we get to watch our kids try to do their best and come to us and say, okay, now we understand. But there is a place as parents when, I lost my train of thought, when we are doing our best and we are, so wait a minute, what was I going to say to you? As parents, we always try to do our best. I lost my train of thought. I forgot what I was going to say. What was I saying? Bismillah, Bismillah, Wallah, Bismillah. I forgot what I was going to say. But anyway, as parents, we always try to do our best. And we certainly work very hard to do our best, but we don't always, and we make mistakes. But we are called upon to care about the feelings of our children, so that even when we make mistakes, it doesn't matter as much, because they feel us caring about them. The Prophet ﷺ was an uplifter. He uplifted. He raised people. He didn't, I know what I was going to say now. Okay, so he uplifted and he made people feel good. So I was going to say, what's the biggest mistake I often see parents make? Even though, like I said, we all make big mistakes. But here's one that I don't think we always notice. And that is, we take our kids for granted and their feelings. So especially little kids, when they go down for a nap, and we're like, man, I hope I get an hour and a half out of this. And then they wake up in 20 minutes. And that child comes walking towards you, and what do you say? Oh. You woke up, huh? Can you imagine if you went to sleep for 20 minutes and you came out and your kid was like, oh, are you back? How would that make you feel? Or maybe I can bring it closer to home. How would it make you feel if your spouse was like, did you just wake up? I thought I put you to sleep 20 minutes ago. You'd be really offended. And our kids, they don't have the words to say they're offended. But we don't make them feel loved and welcome. The Prophet ﷺ is known to really greet people with a smile. And we have this whole greeting, Assalamu alaikum, because we learn to greet one another from the Prophet ﷺ. So when our children wake up from a nap, when they come into the room, be excited for their coming back into your life, even if you don't feel it, because it doesn't matter how you feel. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you feel like you need a longer break. It doesn't matter. It matters how the child feels. How the child feels who's walking in and has no one else in the world to tell him or her, yay, you woke up, I missed you. Even if you didn't miss him. And probably if he woke up in 20 minutes, you didn't. I know. And especially if you're like, we're waiting for that nap just to get something done, whatever, you're like, oh my God. But don't show your child that feeling, because that's a selfish feeling. And we were not brought up by our Prophet ﷺ to bring out selfish feelings, but rather we were brought up to bring out the beautiful feelings of love and care and uplifting feelings that the Prophet ﷺ did. And that should last their whole lives. And whether they're babies or young or teenagers or adults, that when they walk into our homes, into our space, whatever that is, that they should feel like you're excited to see them. And the same goes in the reverse. When your parents come to see you or call you, you don't say, oh, Mom. But you get excited that your mom is calling again. You get excited that she's interested in your life. At least I'm so happy to hear your voice. Not, or whatever the feelings are on the inside that feel like you don't want your life intruded on. So if the first one is to bring our family together, the second one is to switch from my feelings to your feelings, whatever those are. So instead of thinking about my feelings, I want to think about your feelings, my child, my sister, my brother, my parents, my cousins. I want to think about your feeling, my husband. I want to think, what are your feelings right now instead of what are mine? And believe me, if we would just just this one, if we would just hold on to this sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, 90% of the problems in our families would disappear. Because generally problems happen when we're only thinking about ourselves and someone else feels slighted or offended or betrayed or hurt, or the list can go on and on from a small infraction to a great betrayal. It's because we weren't thinking about the others in our lives. Now, the third piece that is important today in our prophetic families is to be visionaries. The Prophet ﷺ was, with his family, both humble and a visionary. What do I mean by a visionary? I mean able to look beyond and see the role of our family in the larger community. See the role of our family members in the larger community and uplift them to fulfill their roles. So when Khadija radiallahu anha saw the Prophet ﷺ going up to Hira before prophethood and spending a long time up there, she recognized that he had a unique role in society. There's enough evidence to tell us that she believed him to be the upcoming prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so saw in his desire for quietude and space preparation for that great moment. And in seeing that, we all know that she supported that fully. Often that's described as, mashallah, what a good wife she was, so devout and obedient and such a great cook and so willing to carry food up to him. It's far more complicated and deeper than that. And we have to give credit to her for who she was. Because if we give credit to her, we can be like her. But if we don't give credit to her, we don't know what to aspire to. And what she saw was a man, a unique man with a unique role in society. And an amazing person whom after 15 years of marriage still hadn't seen a blemish in his character. I just want that to sink in for a minute. After 15 years of marriage, still hadn't seen a blemish in his character. Most people I know, after 15 days of marriage, they can tell you a list of all the things they wish they had known, or at least all the blemishes. And I'm not saying that that's because they're ungrateful. Sometimes those blemishes are real and they just didn't see them. I'm saying that the Prophet ﷺ didn't have them. And Khadija radiallahu anha saw that and recognized it. And she saw him for who he was going to be. And so when he began to do this really annoying thing, why annoying? Because she has a full household of children, and Zayd, her own children, and Zayd, and Baraka, and possibly her adult children. We're not sure. They may have come and stayed for a while. And all sorts of complicated pieces there that made a complicated family. She wasn't young. She wasn't young. As those of you who are young don't fully understand what that means, but there's a physical exhaustion that comes with growing older. It's just different. It's not the same as when you're 20. And you can buckle yourself up and get on to do the work, but it's not the same as being 20 and being like, oh yeah, no problem, I won't sleep for 3 days and I'll get this done. It just doesn't work like, your body just doesn't, your brain says do it, but your body says, no, sorry, not happening. And so Khadija radiallahu anha was not only accepting of her husband going off into the mountain, she was supportive of who he was to become and who he was. That's why she prepared food for him. That's why she supported him. And that's why when he came back, not believing in himself, she believed in him. Making her the first believer in Islam before the Prophet ﷺ himself, who wasn't sure yet. He was confused. So bringing that back to our families, we have to believe in the members of our family and the good things they can do. Don't tell them. If your spouse comes to you and say, I really think I'm going to memorize Quran, don't say, yeah, you might be able to do it in 10 years. Because that's going to be, unless they're saying, it depends on how that conversation goes. But my point is, don't break your spouse down, but build your spouse up. Don't turn a blind eye to what you think your spouse can do. Don't see your spouse only through the lens of what they can do for you. But see your spouse through the lens of what they can do for society. And then support him or her in that work. And do it together. And same with your children. Don't see your children only through the lens of what they can do for you. How they can make you proud in front of your friends. How they can raise up your head in front of your family and your cousins. But see them through the lens of how they can contribute to society. And help them with that in any way you can. Even if it's not the norm. Even if it's not the norm. And don't see your parents only through the lens of what they can do for you, but see them through the lens of how they can contribute to society and help them with that. When and if we can see our family members like that, then we will be the prophetic family. Because we will be able to do things like accept Khadija's complete support of the da'wah. We will be able to accept Aisha radiallahu anha's fun-loving scholarship. And accept is really the wrong word here. We can uplift it. We can see it. We can see it. Because right now, if I asked everyone to take out a piece of paper and a pencil, and I said, choose a family member. If you're married, choose your spouse. Choose a family member and write what their special contributions would be to society. Would you be able to mark them off 1, 2, 3, bam, in 10 seconds? Or would you have to really think about it? And would you start thinking only, well, man, he doesn't do the dishes for me. And I don't really like how she cooks. Or she's really driving me crazy with this. Or he's really driving me nuts with this. Is that where our head goes? Because if that's the case, we're not in the prophetic family. The prophetic family is not about seeing how through the lens of what you're doing for me. The prophetic family is the lens of what can we do for others. And no relationship is ever 50-50. It can be 90-10, 10-90 throughout our lives. It changes, it goes up and down, and those things are going to happen. But in the end, it's not going to hurt so much, those sort of unfair givings, when we know that we're giving because we want to give not only internally to our family, but externally as well. This is the prophetic family. When we can think larger and wider, and not just think about our small, petty, little, the little tiny house movement? You heard of the tiny house movement? Okay, the tiny house movement, in case you haven't heard about it, is this idea of buying a house that's like 200 square feet. And then you simplify your life, and you don't have stuff in the closet, and you don't have any, all this stuff. And actually, if we're talking about a tiny house movement, as in getting the bitterness and the grudges out of the closets, then I'm for that. But generally, when I say tiny house, what does it mean? It means we shrink so much in our family relationships. They're only interested in ourselves and how those few people that we keep in our lives, how they affect us and what they're going to do to us. This is not the Prophet ﷺ's way. It just isn't. The Prophet ﷺ was all about, he was a prophet. He was a prophet, but even with Khadija radiallahu anha, he was about how she is contributing. He talks about her later as the greatest boss he ever had. I love that. And one of the reasons she was the greatest boss he ever had, or he'd ever seen, is because when they got back from a business trade caravan thing, she would feed them the best food. Like she'd give them, I don't know what, but food, like fancy food to thank them for the work that they'd done. So if you're a boss, you better be feeding people. That's a different subject than today, but still. So our prophetic families, what are the 3 points we're going to go away with today? Point number 1, and then I have one more thing to say. Point number 1 is think about our families in a larger picture. bringing them up. If one member of the family starts bringing everyone in, people start coming together. Number 2, stop looking through stop thinking about my feelings, though I recognize the difficulty in this age of feeling, and start thinking about their feelings. What might they be? Even if you do nothing about it, just practice. I wonder how my wife is feeling right now. How does she feel when I come home and sit on the couch? How does she feel when I do the dishes? How does my husband feel right now? How does he feel when the first thing I have to say when he walks in the door is, oh my God, you still haven't done this thing I asked you to do? How does he feel when, and so what, back and forth, like how does he feel? Start thinking about how does he feel? How does she feel? How do my children feel? How do my parents feel? Even if you do nothing different, just think. Just think, how does this person that I love feel right now? We can grow wood from that. This is a special type of love. It's a love that is not selfish. It's a love that loves someone purely out of love for them, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but for that person. It's not out of what you're getting in return. And thirdly, to look at people not through the gaze of what can they do for me, the family members, but through the gaze of how can we together serve our community. And the last thing I want to say to you is, as we look at this really difficult time that we're in, and we're wondering how are we raising our children, and where are we going from here, and what is this era that we're in, I want you to think about the story that we're telling each other and our children and our communities. Because we are right now being defeated by a story that's not true in the post-truth society, in the age of feeling. We're being defeated by a story that says that Muslims are terrorists and Muslims are foreign. Mostly in America, the story right now is that we're all foreign. And by foreign, I don't mean immigrant, I mean not American. And the story we need to tell is that we are a normative part of this society. Not just a normative part of this society, that we as Muslims, as Americans, as people who live here, we recognize that we have a gift, we have something to offer. And we need to get up and live a life so that we are offering it. My new example that I'm saying everywhere I go, so you may have seen this quote on Facebook already, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that the whole world is reading Harry Potter, and they want to go live in Hogwarts. So if you haven't read Harry Potter, first of all, you should read it. Where are you? Second of all, ask someone if when they read Harry Potter, who's read Harry Potter here? Okay, when you read Harry Potter, did you want to go to Hogwarts and visit? Yes, because the woman is a writer. She's a great writer. And she makes you feel like you want to go to Hogwarts. Hogwarts isn't real. But yet we as Muslims, we have something to offer we should have something to offer that is so much greater than Hogwarts. So much more exciting, full of justice and mercy and love and karama and beauty and joy and faith and a settled heart. Yet no one has been able to write the story or tell the story or do anything that makes people wake up in the morning and say, man, I wish I could go to that Muslim world. That's sad. Because at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that is what people felt in the age of feeling. That is what they thought and felt, and their inability to become Muslim was usually because of social issues that kept them back, but they wished for it. So where are we? And the prophetic family, if we get it together, but we have to just get it, it's just enough. I have a young student of mine who has had a double lung transplant twice. And she is an amazing young woman, smart as a whip, with a great, great personality. Her only flaw, she might say about herself, I don't know if it's a flaw, but she has an issue, which is because she's been through such great health issues and difficulties. She doesn't have patience for people who are whining about having a cold or a flu. She's like, oh God, People that are like, oh, I don't feel good, I can't get up off the couch because my nose is stuffed. I mean, she just cannot handle it. Unlike the rest of us who may be like, oh, can I make you a cup of tea? Maybe, some people not, but she's just like, no, she can't deal with it. And you understand why, right? Because she's been through a double lung transplant twice. So it's hard to feel sorry for someone who's just whining about a stuffed up nose. In the same way, we as Muslims today, we are in a situation where we have to recognize that if we have a stuffed up nose, we got to stop whining. We need to get over it. We need to get over it, whatever that's. If the stuffed up nose is in our family, we're just feeling, kind of bored, or we're just feeling like, oh, I'm just not being served like I want to be served, or I'm not being honored like I want to be honored, or I'm not being seen like I want to be seen. We need to get over it and become prophetic. Walk with the Prophet ﷺ, no matter where we are. Walk with him and bring him into our families and uplift our families, each individual, because if one person starts, the rest will follow. But don't expect it in 1 minute. If you've created habits of shaitan, then you have to build trust back by creating habits of the Prophet ﷺ. And you have to be patient and accept that it's going to take time. And at the point where you get to that sweet spot where the Prophet ﷺ is in your life again, you'll know it. You'll know it. And you'll feel it, and the whole family will have so much joy. And it's then, when each of our families are like that people will start to say, I want to be part of that family. I wish I could have dinner with them. I wish I could walk into their story. I wish I could be part of their story. And it'll be then that we fulfill the amanah that the Prophet ﷺ gave us when he passed on to us the only thing that prophets bequeath. Nobody inherits from a prophet anything of land or property. We inherit one thing, and that's the message. But when we inherit it, we have to inherit it with its amanah, with the trust. And that's first in how we are living it. It's first in how we are living it, not in how we're talking about it, how we live it. And the first place to live it is in our families. And so back then, the three, and then I'll close, our whole family, thinking about someone else's feelings, and start looking at each other through the gaze, not of what can you do for me, but what can we do for society. Sallallahu alaihi Muhammad. We have, I call you up, please, to buy books. We have 4 books here in our work as a press. We're really trying to get a new narrative about Muslims out there, both for Muslims and for people of other faiths. And so our 4 books, we have 2 children's books. One is a children's book, young children's book, Drummer Girl. And I want to point out to you that if you go to buy books about children in the bookstore, you're going to find, fathers, that most of these books have really, the father figures are just kind of dumb, making mistakes, like Berenstain Bears, for example. It's a really sad picture of fathers. So in this story, we have a young girl that has a dream, and it's set in Turkey, and her father is the one who helps her achieve her dream. And that's how we would like to raise our Muslim children, recognizing the love and support that their parents give them, not having to fight. Too many books are out there that are written about how the Muslim girl had to fight her Muslim father to have a happy life. And we know that's not true, and we want to change that narration. The second book is Sophia's Journal, which is about a young teenage girl who goes back, and she has a time travel. She's a Muslim. And it's about American history, really. It's not about Islam, but she happens to be a Muslim. And it's a really great story that we're working to get into the public schools. So if you have kids in public school, go talk to your principal, ask them to bring the books into the classroom and learn this book instead of The Breadwinner, which is being taught everywhere and is just full of stereotypes. And then Joy Jots is my book, Happiness, Exercises for a Happy Heart. And this is 52 essays to do one a week, if you want to do it that way, in trying to become a more joyful person in faith. And our last book is called Brewing Stories, and that's a year in the life of the author, the poetess, and her spiritual growth during that year. And so those are our books right now, and we have more coming out. And I hope that if anyone is a writer here, that you will email daybreakpress@rabata.org and see if maybe we can publish your book if you have it written, or maybe help you along that path. We also have some brochures of some of our other work. Thank you for having me here. And Hazel, did you want to say anything? You're standing up? No? Okay. Oh, sure. Are there any questions? I always forget that part. Yes, ma'am. I totally love this question. I'm going to repeat it. What do you do if you have a family member and you don't feel love for that family member anymore? Guess what? Love is a verb. It's not a feeling. Who cares they don't feel love anymore? They're your family member. Love them. Absolutely answer to, I don't feel love for someone is, love them. Act loving. Do everything you can to act loving. And you will, eventually, that love will grow. We live in a lie today, post-truth society that tells us that we're always going to feel princess and prince Disney love for our spouses, or even love for our family members. That love is always going to be alive, and our hearts are going to be pumping, and our veins are going to feel it, and we're going to get tingles in our feet, and I don't know what else. That's not true. That's a lie. The truth is that love needs work. And the truth is that real love is a love that comes over a long lifetime of hard work, loving one another. So love is a verb. And I'm not the only one who says that. Scott Peck says that in his book, The Road Less Traveled. She wrote in the 70s, I think, was a New York Times bestseller. It's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. The Road Less Traveled, or The Road Something Traveled. Anyway, it's a really good book. Dr. Scott Peck, yes? Okay, so the question is, is it really healthy just to disregard yourself and only put everyone else's feelings? Here's my answer to that. There is a balance where we have to be aware of our own spiritual state and how we are being affected spiritually. But at the same time, be careful of not telling ourselves the lie that the only feelings that really matter are our own. So there's a balance there. And certainly, if we are working to fulfill other people's feelings or to help to understand them, we are going to be happier. And that's really my message. The message is that the more we think about someone else's feelings, the happier eventually we become. That's why Oprah gives away all those gifts. Right? She's giving gifts to people, and it's making her happy. So there's an interchange there between the two. When we're giving, we always receive. Yes.
Families here in America are mostly Islamic families. Everyone is Muslim. So a lot of times I get questions from people or Muslims that have non-Muslims that are converted, and so they're trying to keep the balance between being Muslim and being, keeping a relationship with a non-Muslim family. And I wanted to maybe give advice to them with keeping ties and trying to keep that relationship together, because it's really hard for them.
How to interact with non-Muslim family members. I'm just summarizing it for the folks who didn't hear. I think that really the burden is on the converted child to put that extra effort in, because the family is going through this process of accepting the child as this whole new person who might dress differently, prays differently, eats differently. Especially the eating one can be really tough in the family. And so the burden is really on the child to keep on coming back with gifts and love and involvement and talking about their feelings and really bringing that family together. There's never, only in the case where, even with Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, where his mother was torturing him and imprisoning him, he never said a harsh word to her. He only was trying to help her understand that this is actually what he really wants, and he is going to stay Muslim, but let's try to move beyond the chains kind of thing. So the burden is definitely on the child to listen to, and if the parent is like yelling at them, That's all right. That's all right. I mean, you still should be respectful and loving and still go back for more and bring a pie and bring food and buy gifts and invite them over and take them out and do everything possible that we can do to bring those ties together. And we see that in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. He brought his family together to tell them about Islam, and Abu Lahab stood up and humiliated him and broke them all up. He brought them all back. He brought them all back the next day. The same thing, and started over. He just changed his methodology. So now instead of feeding them first and then talking, he talked first and then he fed them. So I mean, we can change up our methodology and be smart about it, but we never give up. We love them, and count on their love. They love you. They love us. They love us. We have to be good to them. And lots of times converts make a lot of mistakes with their families. They're like, I'm changing my name, and my name, don't stop calling me Tina and start calling me Taiba or something. Or whatever. And we need to be sensitive to our families and change what we have to change and hold off on the other stuff and be good to them and as open and loving as possible. Building bridges, not breaking them. Yes? Children are definitely impressionable, but they're mostly impressionable by you. I mean, the parents are really what's going to matter the most. And I really think that if we talk to our kids and we just put them in the right context, that everything is good. Unless the parents are being cruel or denigrating to Islam so my rule with my family was always, especially in the early days, my family is amazingly supportive, amazingly. But in the early days, there were some things shot around here and there, especially by my grandmother, Italian grandmother. And my rule was that they can say anything about me, anything. She can make fun of me and tell me, is it raining outside? What do you want to wear that for? And all this. But she can't, but if she makes fun of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ or God, then I would react. That was my rule. And there was only one time where something like that happened and I reacted. I reacted respectfully, but it was a very different face than I had, and that was it. That was the end of it. Because we teach people how to treat us. So I knew my line ahead of time. So I had a red line ahead of time. And other than that, I've always been very easygoing. I've always been very easygoing. That's been my methodology. Yes? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Is that a general rule that one should employ in for dawah purposes as well? When you're trying to explain the faith to them and have that red line?
I think you need to know your own red lines and you need to know what they are. You don't want to become bitter. But for me, that was my red line. I decided that anything they wanted to say to me was going to be fine. And to be really fair to my family, no one ever said anything really, really horrible to me outside of the raining and the teasing. There's a lot of mocking. But I wasn't going to be sensitive about that, about the mocking. Yeah.
So what would you say then if a family member said something about the Prophet? How would you recommend reacting?
I would just it depended on the family member, but I wouldn't say a lot. I would just make sure that my reaction was very different and I was very, very calm and very, very quiet, and I would just say, not this, or whatever, it depended on what in Arabic, lahonu bas. I don't know how to say that in English. This is a line, don't step over this line, or something. I'd have to figure it out and get exactly the statement. But I would make it very simple and very short, because that's how that's how I deal with naughty kids in schools when I was working in the schools. The more you talk to a naughty kid, the more they stop listening to you. We all know that, right? They hear the first word, possibly the second. By the time you're on the third, they're gone. And that's basically the situation of all human beings. So if you've got a naughty adult who's being kind of nasty to you, they'll hear the first word. By the time you get to the second, they're almost gone, and for sure by the third, they're thinking about how they're going to answer you. So One word is the best. The fewer words, in my opinion, the fewer words are the best. But it's the hal, it's the state that they feel from you. Like you have to grow. You have to grow, like grow on the inside. You get big, you don't get small. You don't shrink when they're nasty. You grow taller. Yeah.
I wondered if you could expound, you were talking about stories and narratives. If you could expound on the importance of specifically female scholarship in Islam and why, how it has benefited in the past, but why is it important for a very massive revival, I would say, of much more female scholarship, female pursuit of knowledge.
Did someone plant you in the audience to ask that question? I'm just kidding. So the question is, why do I think female scholarship is really important that we have a really massive revival? And I came to the United States in 2012. I came here because of the war in Syria, and I hadn't expected to come here, but when I did, I traveled, and that's the first time I came to this mosque with my travel companions, Dr. Mian, and where's your sister? And her sister. Oh, she's at home? And we traveled, we did 69 lectures in the month of Ramadan. Yeah, I'll never do that again. But alhamdulillah, there was great blessing in it, and it was amazing. And I learned in that trip, I learned something about Islam in America, let's say. And that is that, I don't know how, it's a little bit difficult for me to put it into words, but I learned that while we are, as a group, very educated in secular matters, law, history, sociology, engineering, nursing, whatever, English literature, sociology, anthropology. We have a very cursory understanding of Islam, and that cursory understanding often comes from flawed curriculum materials. And when we go for learning, it's very difficult to find a space where we can learn in a systematic way. Now, why then women? Well, first of all, for women, I would say that it's extremely important. I think it's important for both, but I'm going to start with for women. Partially because there's something more in our religion than learning knowledge. So this is a lecture. That's what I'm doing here. I'm giving you a lecture. I'm talking about some different ideas about prophetic guidance. But scholarship traditionally was not only about lecturing. We don't have an academic religion. We have a religion of academics and tarbiyah. So tarbiyah is upbringing. And I'll say that in a minute. So tarbiyah is something that is a relationship. And we have a religion that is very careful about relationships between men and women. And so if women don't have women to help them grow spiritually, there's a great danger that they'll just get stuck. And that is dangerous to the rest of society, because if we're not growing spiritually, if women aren't growing spiritually, and men are, we'll assume that men are growing spiritually with male shuyukh, we're having a really serious imbalance, and we're not really knowing how to build a society. Now, I want to say something else, though, which is that, and forgive me for my long-winded answer here, but there's a feminism out there. There are many different feminisms. Don't be fooled by a person who tells you there's only one kind of feminism. There are many different kinds of feminism. And one of them is let's say second wave feminism. I grew up with second wave feminism. It's from the 60s, 70s. It's the white woman's feminism, the imperialist feminism. It's the feminism that has some man-hating in there, and it's a feminism that has been overtaken by many other feminisms. One of the problems of that feminism is that because it was a white woman's feminism and these white women were living in the suburbs and their problems were not that complicated, they were kind of bored and they wanted access to a man's world. And I'm simplifying this, but one of the goals of that particular feminism was to be as manly as possible. And what I mean by that is that society Western society in the early 20th century elevated what they called male qualities, strength and courage, and denigrated what were called female qualities, mercy, love, gentleness, and there was a lot more respect for what were called like the aggressive, getting ahead at work, and then women grappled with, can I as a woman be aggressive, and all this kind of stuff. I'm coming to a point here. Islam always very beautifully, in my opinion, very beautifully elevated qualities that today we would call feminine and masculine. And I'm not saying that we called these feminine and masculine forever, but that's what we call them today. So for example, mercy. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And mercy is a very feminine quality, but Islam elevates it. So Islam, at its origins, doesn't elevate male qualities and denigrate female qualities. It elevates good qualities, period. And there is something to be said about, just like we need in society men and women doing all things, we need in society men and women talking about Islam, talking and knowing about it and having scholarship in it, so that through the gaze and eyes of the experiences and feelings and qualities and characteristics of both genders, we can see our history in a very balanced way. And my favorite example of that is Salama, radiallahu anha. The reason we know about the story of Ja'far in Abyssinia is because of Salama. And she tells us this long story about the conversations, the gifts, the clothes, the event that happened between the people who came from Quraysh, the Najus, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the different companions. And we see it as a whole picture of a conversational story of gifts and emotion. Now, when you look at the battles, and the men that are narrating the stories of the battles, we generally hear about how deeply that spear went into the other person. And that's because there was a desire to show the strength of the Muslims, and that's how they wanted to show it. And that was important to them at that time, because we had 13 years of nonviolent resistance. And for the Muslims at that time, they felt that was weakness. They thought people looked at them and saw them as weak. So they wanted to talk about the war and say, look how strong we were. We just weren't fighting. But look how strong we were. And so that was important, and it's important for us to see both sides. But we need both. We need both. We need both. And I'm not saying that men can't see the conversation and the whole story. And I'm not saying that women can't see the military. We have Nusayba bint Ka'b, who tells us her story of her own involvement with the military. But both are important. Yes?
You mentioned like the electronics or other things that are in your house and people's households that can be like negative influences or be used negatively. If you look at it from the other way, what are some, I guess, recommendations for things that can be used more proactively to kind of create that prophetic family?
Board games. Because you have to talk. I used to love to play life with my kids, and I would make up a whole life, my name and the kids' names, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and why I'm this mistake. Anything you talk to one another, and I know that. Look, I'm a person of screens. I'm not. I make no claim that I don't have screens at home. I've got all the different kinds of screens, and I use them to run my da'wah, and I use them to run all my organizations, and I desperately need them. But I think that books and artwork, art stuff, and board games never go out of style. And it's also how we use our screens as well, sitting and talking to one another. Definitely we need to eat together and look at each other in the face and talk to each other as much as possible. Maybe cook together. Anything else? In class, you're supposed to leave at least 30 seconds for the introverts to get up the guts to put their hands up. So I will stay silent for a few more moments and then close up. All right. Okay. All right, so thank you very much again, and thank you for having me here. It was fun. I hope you enjoyed it too. It was fun thinking about these thoughts with you. And may we all go forth and create beautiful families and beautiful stories and a beautiful new society where we uplift and fulfill the imani of this great gift of faith that we have. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد على نية القبول والفتوح والشفاء وأمان السلام بالشام كل بلاد المسلمين كل بلاد العالم الفاتحة.